I now look to Professor Swinburne to close the case for the proposition.
Thank you. Like almost everybody here, I have the greatest admiration for the great theoretical theories of modern science. Darwin's theory of evolution, Newton's theory of gravitation, quantum theory, theory of relativity. These are among the greatest intellectual achievements of humanity. But there are even more important questions than the questions which science can answer, which are the questions about how the physical world operates. And the first such question, the one to which a number of speakers have drawn our attention, moral questions. When Professor Odegbo asked you, did you care about this or that, and everybody put up their hand, I think why they put up their hand is because they thought these were moral issues, and it was morally important that people should do something about them. Science can tell you how things work, but it can't tell you what to do with them. And other dilemmas have been drawn to our attention, but just consider this one. At the end of the Second World War, when the only enemy left was Japan, the President of the United States had a choice. Would he drop a couple of nuclear bombs on Japanese cities, which would bring a quick end to the war, or would he not do that, but let the war continue with the loss of life of, expected loss of life of hundreds of thousands of American soldiers and Japanese civilians, and make the dilemma yet more acute. Suppose that in fact more people would have been killed if he didn't drop the atomic bomb than if he did. Which was the right thing to do? It wasn't a matter of what people cared about, it was what was the morally right thing to do in that situation. And there is plausibly, to many moral questions, a true answer. I don't accept the view on the side that this was all a matter of different cultures. How do we set about settling it? Well, we try and look at why a human life is important, what values it has, and we can think of alternative principles which might give alternative answers to that question. One principle is you shouldn't act so as to lead to the death of more people than you can avoid, and that would lead to the dropping the bomb. On the other hand, you might have a reasonable principle that you should never kill somebody unless they are trying to kill you. And since most of the people on whom the bomb would have been dropped were civilians, that would lead to not dropping the bomb. So how do you decide between these two principles? Well, you look at them and you see, well, if you adopted this principle, what further consequences for other issues would it have? And conversely with the rival principle. And then you see, well, if I did adopt this principle, I'd have to say this about that other moral issue, and I don't want to say that, that doesn't sound plausible. And so you can have a debate about moral issues and reflect on them and see what principles they lead to and see whether those principles are plausible. And in the course of the last 3,000 or 4,000 years, humanity has made quite a bit of progress with morality. 4,000 years ago, people used to think that child sacrifice was a good thing. 2,000 years ago, most people accepted slavery as a good thing. We've made progress. And if this is difficult to make progress, well, sorting out morality is a bit more difficult than answering some scientific questions, and that's just how it is. Furthermore, we're subject to bias. But it is an all-important matter what we do with our science. Which would you rather live in? A society that was a bit backward scientifically but had correct views about morality, or a society which was very advanced scientifically but which didn't know the difference between right and wrong? So that's one area. Second area, the issue is whether the ultimate laws of nature provide the ultimate explanation of things. Now, scientists look for laws of nature which will explain how things happen. And laws of nature are generalizations. All bodies of a certain sort do so-and-so. All bodies attract each other with forces proportional to mm-r squared, which is Newton's law of gravity, or something like that. And scientists have got laws about in different areas, relativity theory, quantum theory, laws for different forces. They're looking for an overall law which will explain all these things. And the overall law they're looking for is generally called the theory of everything. Now, suppose you do get to a theory of everything. Well, then it would be the case that if science was itself the terminus of explanation, you would be able to explain everything. But what do laws of nature consist in? What is it for something to be a law of nature? Well, it's for every single body in the universe to conform to it. If Newton's law of gravity was a universal law of nature, then what it would be telling us is that every atom or smaller particle in this universe, or a multi-universe if there is one, is going to behave in exactly the same way, has the same power to attract other bodies and the same liability. And all our principles of reason say coincidence of that sort is not something you can say it just happens, it needs explaining. And there are methods of explaining things which are of the non-scientific kind, but are perfectly good causal explanations. And the best example of this is personal explanation, where you explain something has happened through a person doing it for a purpose and having the power to do it and belief that doing it would have some consequence. For example, the explanation of why I am here talking to you now is that I believe that I had promised to come and talk to you. I had the power to move my legs, and the belief that by moving my legs in this direction I would fulfill my promise to talk to you, and these things explain why I'm here. We explain people's action by their motives, by their powers, and these are good explanations. And therefore the question arises, even if do the ultimate laws of nature, whatever they are, the theory of everything, can this enormous coincidence that otherwise the theory of everything is telling us about the uniform behavior of every object in the universe, can it itself be explained? And all the principles of rational explanation say that if you can explain a large number of things by one simple explanation which leads you to expect those things, then it's probably true. And for that reason, among others, I believe that there's a God. Now, my purpose of saying I'm not here to persuade you that that is the true answer to that question, but I am here to persuade you that it's a very serious question. And a scientist who says that it's just a coincidence that everything in the universe or multiverse behaves in exactly the same way is leaving a coincidence of unexplained in the sort of way that we don't normally explain it. Sorry, no time. And the third area, which science, an all-important area which science cannot explain, is what makes me me, the problem of personal identity. What makes me the same person as the person that was talking to this union, thank you very much, a year ago? One answer is, well, it has the same body, but that's no good as an answer because you would think, and I think would be right to think, that if you took my brain out of this body and put it into that body, then that would be me. So is it the answer it's the same brain? Well, how much of the same brain? If you took half my brain, my left hemisphere, and swapped it with your left hemisphere, would that be me or wouldn't it be me? Well, the person concerned would be a little confused about who he was, but he would make some of my memory claims and some of the memory claims of the earlier person who had that body. Now, therefore, and there would be no way at all in which science could decide who that person was, because science could know everything about every atom of the brain and everything about the memory claims of that person. They wouldn't know who he was. And yet, there's a difference between somebody surviving an operation and not surviving an operation, surviving a brain operation and not surviving a brain operation. And since none of these things can show what the difference consists in, there is, to my mind, a plausible answer that it consists in not a material thing, but an immaterial thing, viz. Having the same soul. Now again, that may not be the correct answer, but what we are is a tremendously important question, and it's an important question which this example illustrates is not scientifically readily answerable, because science only deals with, as you say, the observable phenomena, and the observable phenomena aren't capable of answering them. Thank you very much.